Hi, JoAnne.
Hey Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Yeah, apparently I'm having some computer issues, but everything seems to be working out. So
Yeah,
it's really good.
good.
You can see me and everything's okay.
Yep, everything's good over here on this end. How about over here?
Yep, you're very clear sound, clear picture.
Good.
All right, very good. So let's get started.
Okay.
So those of you that will be watching this, I'm interviewing JoAnne Stephanie DePaulo,
Mm-hmm.
correct? Well, she
Yeah.
works for Dev Northwest. What is your exact title there?
Asset building counselor.
Asset building counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I wanted to interview JoAnne is because the organization she works for does amazing work, not only with financial counseling, but with a broad spectrum of housing and working with the unhoused and working with youth and working with those post incarceration. And organizationally, Dev Northwest is probably one of the premier impact partners for the entire county here in Lane County in which we live. And so I'm very excited to speak with you today because I want those who will watch this to understand what many will know of the great resource that Dev Northwest is as community leaders, but there are many that will hear this for the first time that will not know a thing about who you are or what you do, and that they will have an opportunity to do some really good or receive some really good counseling and or really good support with your organization.
Yes.
All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself for those that are listening, maybe your educational background, things of that nature.
Yeah. Well, I have been here at Dev Northwest for 6.5 years now.
Hmm.
And I originally started working here helping with the foreclosure crisis
Oh,
that
2008.
we experienced that really started in 2008, but carried through to 2013, 14, 15. So when I started at Dev Northwest in 2013, I was going to school to be a teacher, and so I actually had my own kind of growing experience through Dev Northwest, which at the time was known as NEDCO.
Yes.
So in 2019, we merged with Willamette Neighborhood Housing Services, and combined, we've got more than 6 years of experience in helping our community. So it was really a perfect fit. But when I first started at Dev Northwest, I was going to school to be a teacher and was looking for some summer work and came across an assisting position through NEDCO and helping people stay in their homes. So at the time, there was a mortgage payment assistance program that was in place. And it actually is still around in different forms, but essentially helping people stay in their homes. And after spending a summer there at NEDCO, which is now Dev Northwest, just really fell in love with the work, realizing that my heart was really in public service.
Sure.
So continued to stay on board and have been there now in many different capacities, but most recently as an asset building counselor.
Well, that's interesting. I was here in 2008 when the housing market crashed. I lost my job. Abigail was in her second year of law school, and there were, as you remember, all the six largest employers in Lane County closed their doors, and then that sent a ripple effect through the contracting community, and then our jobs, economic infrastructure began to crumble. And so I ended up at LCC for 2009 and then left 2010 for Texas to be a full-time pastor. So I guess I'm mentioning that because I never considered what you said, how you started in 2008 and you were helping in the recovery all the way to 2014 and 2015. And so I guess sitting here listening to you say that, I never really thought about what that recovery process might have looked like because I wasn't here.
Mhm.
What did you learn? What did your organization learn about helping people stay in their homes or recover from that kind of significant loss during that time frame? How did that change you?
Yeah, so I started at Nedco in 2013, but the economic crisis really started in 2008. But you can see the impact that it had and carried on in through those years. And so, originally, when Dev Northwest started, or Nedco back in those days, the organization focused on affordable homeownership.
Yes.
And when the foreclosure crisis happened, we saw that there were needs that needed to be met. And so in 2013, there was actually a Senate bill that passed, Senate Bill 558. And so what it said was that homeowners would not be able to be foreclosed on without mediation first.
Oh, very
And
good.
so I was able to come in alongside with the Oregon Homeowner Stabilization Initiative. And so OHSI, the Oregon Homeowner Stabilization Initiative, actually provided funding to help pay for people to stay in their homes. So people were able to receive mortgage payments. So that, alongside with the Senate bill, which kind of put a pause on foreclosure, allowed us to come in and counsel folks.
Wow.
And so and through that, so through those periods, we're able to extend our services out into Marion County as well as Oregon City, so Clackamas County. So in
How many counties
response
is that?
to,
How many counties can you work in? Do you guys
so
represent?
currently we serve, after our merger, we serve Lane, Lynn, Benton, Lincoln, Marion, and Clackamas. So we
Seven
work
counties.
across 6 counties.
6. Okay.
That's right. And so one thing that we saw in that response is what we focus on is building thriving communities. So if we see a need, we try to meet it. Originally, we started with affordable homeownership, but once the foreclosure crisis happened, we came in and started to counsel folks and trying to help people stay in their homes, because we know not only is it good for them and their families, but it's also what's best for our communities, which really falls back onto our mission, which is building thriving communities.
I'm interested. I mean, I have a lot of things to talk to you about, but just on a human and a personal level, you must have been very young in 2013 when you started going to school to be a teacher. From that perspective, here you are looking for a summer job, and you're right in the middle of one of the largest crises this state has had to face. How did that impact you personally? What did you learn? What did you realize about who you were, how it could help you, and what you could do to help others in the future if they find themselves facing that possibility?
Yeah. What I realized was that my heart was in public service, and what the organization did for me really helped me help other folks.
Hmm.
And so the organization supported me in getting the personal development and the further education that I needed in order to be able to serve our clients. And um, so it was tough. We weren't always able to save everyone's home, but we did save a lot of homes. And the other thing was we were able to support people, because it's so draining emotionally, your mental health, thinking that you're going to lose your home, wondering if they're going to come in and change your lock. So being able to provide the education piece and really walk alongside them. My actual role led me to these mediations where I represented clients. So I worked alongside clients, and then the banks would come in with their attorneys, and so it empowered me, but that's thanks to the organization providing the personal development, which in turn helps our community. So it really is kind of full circle.
What was that like? I mean, you're mediating, you have your clients, you have the power of the organization and the interest of the clients, but now you're dealing with a very formidable legal force. How did you grow through that?
At first, because when the bill first passed in 2013, one of my colleagues, who is now our director of asset building, I would come in and alongside her, observe her, and then I started to take over and deal with these mediations myself. And so at first I think it was a learning curve for all parties involved, including attorneys who normally come in and, of course their job is to represent their clients, but we're in mediation, so the setting is a little different. And so it was a learning curve, but I think what was great is what's great about the law is once it's written, of course, some might say it's open to interpretation, but some things are pretty black and white. Like, for example, if someone is asking for a modification, we know what that process is like, and we know what the ratios are supposed to look like. And so it was great because it gave us the opportunity to check in with the bank through with their attorney present and say, okay, so it looks like you rendered a decision. How did you come to that decision? And so, but again, all of that I learned through observing my colleague, who's now the director of asset building, and then a lot of personal development because I was going to school to be a teacher,
Right.
but so it was a really interesting growing experience. I still feel, I think as an organization, we still feel good about having that as a service and having that experience, especially with our current times.
Yes.
And right now with COVID-19 and folks being told that they can have a forbearance on their mortgage, but still people need to know what that means
Mhm.
and that there needs to be a plan afterwards. So just like the eviction moratorium that we're seeing right now, that does not mean that we don't pay our rent,
Right.
right? And so the forbearance on our mortgage does not mean that we don't owe that payment. And so the education piece, which was always where my heart has been, is still there.
So, on a personal note, someone asked me the other day about should they pay their rent if they didn't, if they were scared.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, if it was me and I had the money, I would pay. If you're really that worried about it for right now, pay at least half for right now. Hold on to the other half in your savings just in case. And if you don't need it, then at the end of this, you can send it to your landlord so he gets a portion of what he needs. You feel safe, and then you can submit it to him, and then no one's hurting. Is that
Mm-hmm.
is that a reasonable thought process?
I think if you've got the money to pay the rent, you should. I'd be interested, in hearing a little bit more about where their worry comes from. I think that's one really great thing about the programs that we offer is it. I mean, it's multifaceted, but this particular situation really is on a one-on-one basis. And
Hmm.
so, I would say if they're worried about food, if they're worried about utilities, it's about looking into what resources are available locally or in your county to be able to offset that expense so we can free up some money. But, if we can pay the rent, let's do it. And if not, then we have the protection and the peace of mind knowing that the eviction moratorium means that you'll be able to stay in your home. But what we want to plan for is what's going to happen at the end
Yes, that's
once that
really,
90 days is lifted. Mm-hmm.
is that's probably one of the most I want to say dangerous times if we're not ready as these moratoriums lift. What will happen then?
Mm-hmm. That's
What are
right.
we as consumers prepared? How are we prepared to respond if we're not being careful with not paying the rent or whatever the situation is?
That's right. And so at the end of the 90 days, if we're not paying the rent, then does that mean we're going to have 90 days of rent due? And same goes for mortgage. Does that mean at the end we're going to have 60 to 90 days of mortgage due? And so I think it's just an education piece. In terms of the eviction moratorium, we don't know how the repayment's going to take place at the end. We don't know if it's going to be in one lump sum, or will the governor say something in terms of how repayment needs to take place? But traditionally, with mortgages, we know that a forbearance or a deferment is going to lead likely to a modification, or at least that full repayment amount will be due. And so maybe it'll waive fees during this time. We might be able to waive fees, but if we have part of that payment, Mark, I think that what you're saying is right, and it is good that for us to set aside what we can. because if we can have any portion of it, once that 90 days is up, that's going to alleviate a bigger burden that could just be kind of,
Hmm.
bundling up. So
Yeah, if I remember correctly in the conversation, they were concerned about the unemployment, the system that supports the unemployment checks, that it was overloaded. Would they get it in time? They're afraid they wouldn't have enough cash flow to buy food. And so I
yeah,
said, well, at a minimum, at least you can set some aside, but you got to send something to your landlord if you can, because, they could have a loan on your building and you don't know about it.
yeah. And the unemployment system is overloaded right now. I actually had an appointment with a client this morning who signed up for unemployment, because, as we know, there's that 1 week waiting period. And
Yes.
so she submitted her claim back March 16th and still hasn't heard back. And so
We were told that that was waived, that that 1 week waiting period was waived. Can you confirm or that?
I can't confirm, I'm not quite sure, but what I can tell you is this one experience with this client from this morning is that she's been waiting since March 16th. And that's just even trying to get a hold of unemployment,
Sure.
the unemployment, which I know that our colleagues there, they're all trying to do the right thing too,
Absolutely.
are just bombarded right now. So hopefully there's more support that takes place, and that's why I think the eviction moratorium is going to at least give people, some peace of mind for everyone to get caught up, because really all of us are being impacted in some form.
Yes, very good.
Hmm.
Let me get to some of the other interesting things we talked about so
Hmm.
people know a little bit more about Dev Northwest. Now, it used to be Netco, and you guys merged with Willamette Neighborhood Services.
Housing services, that's right. Hmm.
Now, Netco used to own 25 to 30 different buildings or homes,
Hmm.
and now post merger, you own responsible for 400 different types of dwellings.
That's
Can you
right.
tell us a little bit about that configuration?
Yeah, so the majority of the real estate came from the Willamette neighborhood housing side, but those really fall into our affordable homes programming. So we have four separate programmings, and so we've got the financial well-being piece,
Mhm.
we've got access to funds, we have affordable homes, and thriving communities. And so we believe that access to affordable housing is so incredibly important, and we want to be able to provide viable pathways to that. And so that could be on a rental level, so through some of the rentals that we have, but also through homeownership. So more recently, we're embarking in community land trust projects,
Interesting. I didn't.
and so we actually own the land and are building and selling the homes. And so we actually have a project that's well underway out in Cottage Grove, and one that we're in the middle of right now in Florence, where we're actively seeking applicants for our Florence project now. So folks should definitely check out our website. And then we also, and more to come. So we've got Cottage Grove, Florence, and a project in South Corvallis that's going to be coming up. We've got a project off here in Eugene off of Royal. That particular project is going to have nearly 40 homes for sale. And so these homes are going to be for people who are under a certain income level, but the moderate income level is going to, I think, allow a lot of people to embark into homeownership who wouldn't traditionally have access to homeownership. And these homes, for example, Mark, the ones in Florence will be a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom homes that the target sell price will be around 165 to 195K.
That
So
is
we're
amazing.
right, because we own the land, we're going to be able to sell these homes at a much more affordable cost. And folks will still be able to build equity. And if they want to sell and move on, they'll be able to build equity through this homeownership route, because we know that rents are climbing
Yes.
and have been, really. If you think about the foreclosure crisis that occurred where people were losing homes and then needed a place to live. Well, that was really the perfect climate for folks to start raising those rents, right? And then here we go. Now housing is unaffordable. So
Right.
that's definitely something we're very passionate about.
Very good. Now, community land trust.
Mhm.
Uh, how did you manage to purchase the land, and were these federal funds, state funds, county funds? Where did the capacity come from to do this?
So some of the funding came from the state and some in different forms. Like for example, the Florence project, the city of Florence sold us their land because they're so dedicated to their residents and wanting to have home ownership. So state tax credits or some of the ways, and it's really ongoing and dependent on each land
Mhm.
property. The royal site was sold to us by some local family members at a very reasonable cost, and that one's going to produce 40 new homes. So through a multifaceted way. But what's great is that everybody who's a part of it sees and shares that same mission of knowing that affordable housing is incredibly important and critical for for everyone.
When I was in Rotary, I spent 8 years in Rotary, and every year we built homes and Habitat for Humanity. And those homeowners that were selected were able to participate in the construction process and develop sweat equity.
Mhm.
And most of those materials materials and labor were donated to help keep the cost down. Is any of that process part of this construction cycle, these construction cycles?
You know how we're including homeowners, and as we're this is all kind of unfolding. The Cottage Grove site was our pilot site, and now we're on to Florence. And so Cottage Grove will be done in the next probably, and we'll have to see how COVID-19 delays things, but our goal was end of summer. And so as we're piloting the Cottage Grove site and moving on to the Florence site, our hope is that as we select homeowners, that they'll be able to be a part of the building piece and not necessarily sweat equity,
Mhm.
but being able to decide on color. What colors do you want in your home, and what about the cabinet? So really wanting people to feel like this is their home.
How many homes will be in the Cottage Grove project?
I think we're looking at 6 on Cottage Grove and 12 in Florence. And then the project that's lined up right after Florence will be Royal, and I think we're looking up to 40 homes there. And then I think South Corvallis would be next. Hmm.
Now, so those that are in the construction process assisting Dev Northwest, the contractors, to keep homes affordable, the part of it is because Dev Northwest owns the land,
That's right.
right?
And then buying things in bulk, right? Being able to buy things in bulk is another way to keep that cost down. But we do know um, that the most traditional way to build assets is in owning property.
Mhm.
And by us owning the land, we're able to offset that expense on the homeowner. And we explain to folks that because sometimes they think, well, this sounds like manufactured housing where I have to pay rent space. And the thing about that is oftentimes when you own a manufactured home and you're paying rent space, the private landowner gets to set that rent space amount. And just like everyone else, that rent space is increasing, and pretty soon it's unaffordable.
Mhm.
And we see this in a lot of manufactured housing parks. How we're going to do it is we're going to be doing it as a lease. So they get to lease our land,
Okay.
and it's going to be on a 99-year lease. So people have the peace of mind knowing that they're going to be able to age in place. And that 99-year lease will be something that they could then carry on to an heir if they pass on. So we really want folks to feel secure in that home.
All right, that was going to be my next question. If there was a title transfer with the lot itself, but it's going to be a lease, and if
That's
they
right.
wanted to leave it as an inheritance to their children, is that going to be a possibility?
Yeah, and the lease will then be renewable to their children or whoever they leave the home to.
So if let's say someone's in the home for 20 years and they leave it as an inheritance for the 99-year lease, would its lease start over at 99 years again, or would it be minus the 20?
That's right. It'd be renewable to whoever takes on the property. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Well, that's really good news.
Yeah. And so, in terms of affordable housing, we do it by owning rentals. We through the Willamette neighborhood housing side, there's a lot of apartment complexes, and we also have some single family units that we own. And then, of course, now we're constructing homes that we're going to be selling. And then as far as our access to funding programming, so that would be another area of service, would be access to funds, is we might have folks who have some savings, but just not enough to purchase their home. And that's where down payment assistance comes in. So when we talk about access to funds, we're talking about providing monetary assistance to folks to try to help them get into their first home through down payment assistance. And a separate funding source that we also offer is something called an IDA. And our IDA account is our match savings account, where every dollar that someone saves gets matched with 3. And so through the IDA program, someone is also able to save for down payment on a home, but also for a car, because we know that owning a vehicle is an asset, right? Not having that monthly payment. They could also do an IDA for assistive technology. So maybe someone has a trade where they need a tool that would help them ensure employment. And then also for school. And we know that it's an asset to pay for school up front rather than, if possible, avoid student loans.
Where do the matching funds come from?
The matching funds come through the Oregon IDA initiative. So actually, folks will be able to donate through a state tax credit, which is the money is then allocated and dispersed across the approved fiduciary organizations, which we are one.
Now, how long or when was the Oregon IDA initiative birthed?
That's a great question, Mark. I'd have to look that up. I can tell you it's been around since I've been around, and that's 6.5 years, and I'm sure it's been around for longer than that. This last year, we were asking legislators to continue to support IDA funding. So if there's anything that y'all can do out there, would be to continue to contact your legislators and let them know that how this funding would impact you and what it would mean to you. So I would say it's been around for a while, and our hope is that it's something that's going to stay around for quite some time.
Well, this is the first time I'm hearing about some of this, so it's exciting. I wish these were things I would have known and would have learned. And do you know, I know at LCC they used to have a home buying class. Now, prior to Nedco merging, was Nedco part of that process where these kinds of things were discussed?
Yes, that's right. So since we were always traditionally focused on affordable homeownership, we knew that the education piece is critical in this. And we also saw it back in the foreclosure intervention days, but even now, that education piece is so critical, which I think is one of the reasons that I really fell in love with this organization. Was, my heart was always in public service and education, and now I get to work with people across many different demographics and teach. Right. And so the financial well-being service area that we have really focuses on that education piece, where folks have the opportunity to practice and develop good habits. A lot of times, you don't know what you don't know, right? Yes. And sometimes we learn from making mistakes, myself included. I've learned so much through this curriculum and teaching this curriculum. And so we do have a home buyer foundations course available for folks. We also have another core series that we offer called Financial Foundations. And so in Financial Foundations, we focus on building spending plans and how does credit work. We talk about financial planning and how do we plan for retirement. And then in the Home Buying Foundations class, we're actually able to pull in partners from our community, where we assist and facilitate in the class. But it's 8 hours of all home buying, and it's from beginning to end. So, what does a realtor do and how do they get paid, and what does it mean to be an escrow, all the way down to what kinds of loan types are there and how much money does each one require. So folks might come to us because they're interested in home buying and heard that we offer this class, but another way might be that they actually went in and spoke to a lender and decided that they wanted to try to buy a home, but that particular loan type requires home buyer education. So then they come to know us through that route. So
what kind of relationship does your organization have with the local, let's say, board of realtors or other organizations that lead us through? Because I've purchased 3 homes now over the last several years, and outside of seeing you at a networking event or remembering the name Nedco, and in the past I remember thinking Nedco was just a city uh, organization that helped the poorest of the poor. I
mhm.
never thought someone like me might have been eligible, or how the classes might have been able to help me. How does your organization, how do you guys interact with the board of realtors and organizations such as that?
Yeah, networking is so important. Like you mentioned before, you've never heard of our organization. And how would someone come to know Dev Northwest? And a lot of it has to do with us, ourselves, being able to come out and meet and talk to people, but also connecting with partnering organizations like the real estate, honestly, any real estate realtor, I should say, but also lenders, and checking in with Homes for Good and shelter care, and making sure that all organizations who offer any type of public service also know what we do. I think that what we offer is a little different from other organizations in terms of being financially focused
Mhm.
on building assets. And so we also need to know what other people offer and what they do, so that way when folks come to us, we're able to make those connections. So yeah, I think the partnering piece is huge.
Very good. I'd like you to expand a little bit some more. We had a very good conversation regarding the financial education piece
Mm-hmm.
and those post incarceration. Could you
Mm-hmm.
expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so part of reaching out to our community means working with everyone across all demographics. And in the past, we've gone in and talked to sponsors, and we're planning on doing so in the coming month, but that might have to be delayed because of the current situation. But coming in and working with staff, so we're able to come in and work with staff and tell them what we do, so that they can then refer people directly to us. We've also done on-site education at McLaren Youth Facilities.
Mhm.
So we offer what we call on-site education opportunity at work. So being able to bring the education directly to the folks where they're at. So in terms of the folks who are reintegrating after incarceration, I mean, some of the barriers that they would face would be things like cleaning up credit, or building credit, and looking for housing. And so being able to bring these classes and helping them develop some good habits to reintegrate.
Mhm. So credit repair and credit building are
Mhm.
two of the areas. If what are some of the things? What would that look like when you start talking to someone about credit repair or credit building?
Yeah, specifically when we talk about credit building, one of the tools that we offer is a credit builder loan. So our sister organization to Dev Northwest is Community Lending Works.
Mhm.
And I like to see them as the lending branch to Dev Northwest. And Community Lending Works is a separate lending branch to Dev Northwest. And so how the credit builder loan works is, um, for every, and I'm going to use little quotes here, for every payment or every dollar that you set aside to Community Lending Works, for this credit builder loan. So each month you set aside a certain amount. They report it to 2 of the 3 credit bureaus as if you had made a
Wow.
payment. And so what's actually happening is you're able to save. So they're taking your savings for you that you're setting aside, but each month it's being reported as a payment made on a loan. And so at the end of that term, which typically is about a year, so someone might say, I want to do a $300 credit builder loan for a year. So each month they're making $25 payments. At the end of that year, the credit bureau sees it as payment paid in full, and then they get their $300 check. So it's a really great tool to build credit while saving, but not having to manage debt.
Well, that's really exciting. What kind of conversations are held with some of the credit services? How willing have they been to participate in this?
So anyone who's interested in looking at building their credit through the credit builder loan has access to this product. They just have to give us a call through Community Lending Works, and or they can reach out to me, and I can get you connected to the right person. And it's just a great way to start building your credit, no matter where you're at. And we offer this a lot to youth too. I mentioned going to McLaren youth facilities, but we have also gone into our local high schools. And we have a curriculum called Youth Financial Foundations. And this is really a great way for youth also to start building their credit, especially as they think about taking off in life. Credit is so important, not just for borrowing, not just for lending, but for living. If
Yes.
we're looking for a place to rent, they're going to be pulling our credit. If we're trying to get a car so that we can drive to work, they're going to pull our credit. Once we get into our place and we try to get electricity and lights, they're going to pull our credit. And if it's not healthy, they're going to ask for a bigger deposit. And so cleaning up credit or building credit is super important too. And that's something that we include in our financial foundations class. But really how I think folks can really get the most out of our services would be on the one-on-one consultation. Because through the one-on-one consultation, we do a comprehensive financial analysis, and we're able to pull your credit and create a plan and hear what are your goals, and then set this plan into action.
I can't stop smiling listening to you talk. I wish I would have known all of this. All of these years I've been helping people, and I was a football coach and a soccer coach and a Cub master and a Scout master, and I've worked with all kinds of people in the community. I wish I would have known these things, even for myself,
Yeah.
but for others. What an amazing resource we have.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm glad that you know now.
Mhm.
And I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. So that way, whoever hears this or is watching this, if it reaches at least 1 or 2 or 300 people, then we know that we're making an impact. And I should also say, all of our services are also available in Espanol. And so we offer all of these programming services in Spanish, which we're super proud of, and just want to make sure we're delivering equitable services across all 6 counties, but really across the state of Oregon.
And right now, your organization is making videos on your Facebook page that people can go to and access and begin to learn and hear and see about some of these products and services, correct?
That's exactly right. Each Tuesday for the next, I'd say we've got about 5 weeks left, we are doing a Tuesday at noon series called Financial Resiliency in English at noon, and then at 12:30, Fortaleza de Finanzas en Español.
Very good. Now, I want you to, if you could expand a little bit on the topic of credit repair. How do you help those that come to you repair their credit?
It just depends on what their credit looks like. Um, First and foremost, we have to pull that credit and kind of see where they're at. We need to hear what their goals are. And really it's just kind of getting started. That's one of the things that we say in class is, what's the best first step that you can take? It's just getting started. And so creating that plan and prioritizing which debts make sense to pay in which order. And sometimes we have to take an inventory and try to do some investigative work and see Are there items in collections, and where do we go from there? Are there judgments? Are there items that might have judgments pending and they didn't realize? So it just kind of depends on the type of debt that they have and what their plan is, but really it's just kind of digging in and get started. And often what I see that's really the biggest barrier that has for folks is just coming in and doing that first step. Because man, talking about money is so hard. And people are willing to talk about a lot of things, but when it comes to, you know, what's your credit score and how much money do you make, it creates this kind of this feeling of people get anxious and nervous, and I get it. And so I think that how we fix it is just coming in and having that first meeting and celebrating that.
Right. And I asked you to expand upon that because I think it's really important that anyone from any socioeconomic area in our community could suffer with credit issues, need credit repair, need support on how
Mhm.
to get out of a very difficult situation, difficult season, and how having an outside perspective, someone who's not emotionally involved with the pain, emotionally involved with the discomfort of how did I get here,
Mhm.
and how am I ever going to fix this?
Yeah.
And I think it's a really critical piece for people to know that there is somewhere they can go in the community that can begin with them at the beginning. And yes, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's part of the process, and help us sort through from where we're at to where we want to go. And just the fact that Dev Northwest is willing to get in the middle of that struggle with someone in that pain and help them process that, that's it's it's amazing. I can't even find
Yeah,
a word.
we love that. You know, we love seeing people through. We love meeting them where they're at and then seeing them through to wherever their goal is. I can think of a client success stories. Of course, it's awesome when we have our folks who buy their homes, who get into homes. But there's a client who sent me a photo of his credit card frozen. So he said, JoAnne, I actually went ahead and froze my credit card so that I don't use it anymore. And he sent me a photo of his Ice Cube credit card. And I just thought that in itself is such a huge success
Hmm.
because this person was able to create a barrier and say, you know what, I'm not going to rely on this credit card anymore, focusing on paying down that debt. And so I think that success has such a wide spectrum, and celebrating each success is so important so that we can say we can stay the course.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about, you are HUD approved counseling organization. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about what that means?
Yeah. So all of our counselors are HUD approved housing counselors. And what that means is HUD had tried to, has set a standard of what counseling has to look like. And so through that, that means um, knowing what debt to income ratios look like on a lending side, all the way to knowing what program and resources are available through your community. So really, it equips us to be better counselors.
Hmm.
It really, I know that it really elevated my game going through that training, completing that exam, and it also made me a little bit more innovative and kind of pushed me into creating more programming that made more sense. And so having that HUD approved seal, I think, just makes us much more equipped, well-rounded counselors to be able to work with folks in any capacity, whether it's looking at people who need help and assistance with Section 8 and knowing and having those contacts at Homes for Good, all the way up to looking at folks who are interested in home ownership, but being able to identify that they're vets and being able to speak specifically about VA loans. So yeah.
Very good. Now let's talk a little bit about the youth, those coming out of foster
Mhm.
care, those aging out of foster care you mentioned. Dev Northwest has housing options, housing opportunities for these young kids coming out of foster care with no hope and no family
Right.
and no capacity to care for themselves. Can we talk about
Mhm.
that for a few minutes?
Yes, so the Polk Street Apartments opened up in 2015 as the first complex in Oregon dedicated to youth aging out of the foster care system. And just like you said, Mark, a lot of these youth who are aging out, so now, you know, they might have been and very likely been going from home to home. Now they're 18 and without any parental co-signers or any adult support, or rental history or credit history are kind of on their own. And so this is one of the proudest projects the Polk Street Apartments opened up to help these youth with affordable rents and being able to also have access to our education. And so the tenants who come in have a one-bedroom apartment and an affordable rent where we're helping and coaching them through access to these programs, including the IDA, which I forgot to mention. We also have a youth-specific IDA. And so with the youth-specific IDA, if they can save $500 in as quick as 6 months, we'll match it with $1,500. And they can also use it as a rental deposit. So they'd have $2,000 for a car, school, or a rental deposit. What's really neat about the Polk Street Apartments is this last year in 2019, we received some additional funding from Lane County to begin growing that development and adding 12 additional units. So that we're about to add 12 more units to this complex to be able to house more youth.
So then there'll be a total of 24?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So there'll be a total of 24 units on Polk Street?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And you probably anticipate those filling up fairly quickly.
Yes, that would be my guess. Although, you know, one of the things that we noticed the first time around was that, you know, a lot of these, you have to build trust. And these youth have seen a lot of turnover and haven't really had someone that they can trust. And so for a little while, when we first opened it up, they filled up right away. But for a little while, there might have been one or two that were kind of empty because the kids the youth felt, didn't feel comfortable right away. So that's where really the wraparound service is super important, and bringing in counselors through Looking Glass and making sure that they have someone through maybe DHS. A lot of times these youth don't realize that they have access to additional funding, even if they've aged out of foster care. So the wraparound service piece for these particular youth is super important.
Oh, very good. Can you tell me a little bit about the role that Dev Northwest played in the commercial development of Sprout there in Springfield, the incubation place for the restaurants? Because I found that very compelling when you shared that with me. Just a full the expansion of what you do. It's not singular in regards to residential, but the commercial application is significant as well.
That's right. So formerly Nedco, right? Really played a huge role. We owned that building right there on 4th and A Sprout, and as I mentioned before, our financial innovations manager, curriculum educator Ross played a huge role in, along with other folks, in using that as our food incubator. And so a lot of small businesses that are food related started there. So there was a commercial kitchen that folks were able to use there. And then it slowly turned into kind of what it is now. As you can see, those stand-in restaurants that are there now did also start through some of our coaching. So we focused a lot on small business coaching. Since we sold that building, which I think has now been maybe 2 years or maybe a year and a half mark, since we sold that building, we have kind of redirected business counseling. Because we know that there's other folks who do a great job at helping with business counseling, but in terms of business funding, we still have Community Lending Works. And they really, I mean, that's their mission, is helping small businesses, because again, it builds thriving communities. So really being able to provide the money.
And so did you say that Dev Northwest is no longer doing small business coaching, or it's transitioned to something different?
We do look at, if someone were to come in and say, I'm looking at starting a small business, how we would start would be with personal finances. I mean, we know that a lot of small businesses often have to fund themselves.
Yes.
So we would still be looking at personal finances, but then from there, we would be referring to other local resources that could help them and take the time to help them build their business plan and being able to look at the marketing piece. We do offer a workshop called Your First Side Hustle. And so your first side hustle focuses on helping you take a hobby and then generate some income while maintaining your mainstream line of employment. But for folks who are really going all in on the business piece, we'll focus first on the personal finance piece and then do referrals for more comprehensive business coaching.
And that's called, you mentioned, did you say First Side Hustle?
Yes, Your First Side Hustle. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, one of the many workshops that we offer.
Oh, that's the title of a workshop.
Yes, that's the name of our workshop. Yep.
Fantastic. Wow.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we see an increase in minority and women-owned businesses in Springfield. What role is Dev Northwest playing in those expansions?
A couple of years back, we actually did a women's only class that was actually led by our CEO. So our CEO is a woman who actually is also was a participant of Nedco Services. Through Nedco, she purchased her first home, and now here she is, the CEO of our business. So in terms of businesses on Main Street in Springfield through Community Lending Works.
Right, or any of the businesses that are expanding into Springfield.
Yeah, many of the businesses, for many of the businesses on Main Street in Springfield have received funding and been able to grow or even just plant themselves there because of the funding of Community Lending Works. And so we not only want to focus on women, but like you said, minorities as well. And that's not just through supporting on the business funding piece through Community Lending Works, but also through the homeownership piece, and knowing that there's a huge economic disparity among minorities.
Okay. Now, who is your CEO?
Emily Ryman is our CEO.
I remember her name. And you said you also have a COO.
Brigida Olson. Mm-hmm. So 2 women.
Very good. Tell us a little bit real quick about the makeup of Dev Northwest.
Yeah, so we have our 4 service departments. So I mentioned the financial well-being department, where we really focus on the education piece there. We've got the access to funding, so not just through down payment assistance and the IDA program, but I would also even insert Community Lending Works in terms of access to funding there. We've mentioned the affordable homes, and so not just for renting, but also building and creating viable pathways to homeownership, and then thriving communities, and really that kind of ties it all in together. And we know that in order to create healthy, prosperous, and equitable neighborhoods and people, it's multifaceted. And so really being able to look at all of these different departments, so to speak, and being able to utilize each other. We work across the state, really, and so we are a pretty tight-knit group. Even though I've got colleagues that are out of Oregon City, I mean, just yesterday, all of our counselors were on a call and on a Zoom call, so we could see each other and support each other. But the same goes for all departments, is checking in and then dispersing the information in order to be able to support each other.
So Dev Northwest has activities in 6 counties. Mm-hmm. And you have employees and representatives in all 6 counties?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Oh, very good.
We have a little under 50 on staff. I think we're over 40, under 50. And one thing that I can say about each staff is we're all just so dedicated to the work. It's always fun to be able to send out a client success story to the whole staff, because our finance department keeps us going just like our IT guy keeps us going. And so especially now, I mean, our IT guy has really kept us going. So we're all super passionate about this work.
Now, what kind of ongoing training and development does your organization put you guys through?
So on top of the personal development that is position specific, we have monthly meetings that we have. We just really unfolded it, and I have to excuse myself because we just renamed it, but the group is focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So now we have an action team, an equity action team that meets monthly, which I'm proud to be a part of, where we're able to really look at our services and say, are we really delivering services in an equitable way, and what can we do? And then being able to take that and take this information, present it to the board, present it to management, and make those changes. So it's really neat being able to make some tangible changes to make a broader impact. And then through that, all staff participate in monthly lunch and learns. And so the topics vary, but all staff participate within their offices on a monthly lunch and learn, and then a quarter all staff where we all get together once a quarter on an all-day training to be able to continue to grow and support each other.
What's the budget of your organization? Do you know?
I don't know. That's a great question. I'll have to follow up with you on that one.
Okay. And how large is the board of directors?
I don't want to guesstimate, but I want to say there's 10 folks, which is a wide makeup of people. Currently, we're interested in looking on getting more residents, right? So Springfield, Eugene clients that have come in to work with us, and wanting to have a diverse board is super important to us also.
Oh, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Any final comments you'd like to say to the community at large? Whether a lot of people will see this, they could be bankers, they could be mortgage brokers, they could be realtors, or those wanting to buy a home or needing financial help or counseling. What would you say to them?
I would say to them that we're here to help, and whether it's and in terms of industry service professionals, if your heart is in public service and wanting to help your community, we love partnering up with lenders and realtors and all kinds of agents, and being able to come in together. In fact, Mark, we even have local attorneys who come in and volunteer and teach an estate planning class on a volunteer basis. So we love partnering with local folks and being able to provide this kind of service for people. As for clients, so people who are seeking services themselves, one thing that I think is really important that I mention is right now we're offering free memberships to all folks in the food industry and the food service industry that have been impacted by COVID-19. So please contact us. We'd love to be able to work with you and help you and create a plan and alleviate any of the stress you might be feeling. But the same goes really to anyone, is that we want to be able to help you. We want to help you reach your goals and meet you where you're at. So.
Good. Well, I want to thank you for your time today. I'm very excited to learn more about Dev Northwest. You're a wealth of information. I feel like I can really help people, referring them to all of you, and know that they're going to get really good help. So thank you. And if people wanted to contact you, how could they do that?
Yes, if people would like to contact me, they can hop onto our website, devnw.org. But they could also give us a call at 541-345-7106.
Very good. Well, thank you, Stephanie. Have a very good day. And JoAnne, I'm sorry, I said
That's
your
okay.
last
It's my middle
name.
name. That works.
Yeah. And thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. It was just a real joy to learn so much about your organization today. I have to commit your organization to memory as far as the full scope of your services, because it's just absolutely incredible.
Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate the time and everything that you and your wife are doing for our community also.
Well, thank you. You have a good day, and we'll be in
You
touch.
too.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.